In my previous two videos, I discussed the topic of what if Tien and Yamcha unlock limit-breaking forms, how they unlock it, and what exactly they would do. Now with those two out of the way, only one Earthling remains, that being our favorite Baldy, Krillin. Now unlike Tien and Yamcha, Krillin isn't derived from anyone within Journey to the West, meaning that we can't pull any ideas from that. So if he isn't based on any characters within this novel, then who or what was he inspired by? Well, if we take one look at the gi that he wore at the beginning of Dragon Ball, as well as the 6 dots on his head, it's easy to see that Krillin is supposed to be a Shaolin monk, who are a specialized subset of Buddhist monks who practice Zen Buddhism combined with martial arts. Now if we take a look into their practices, there are a few things that we can take from them in order to create this new form. Starting off, we'll talk about how he would tap into it. So within these teachings, reaching enlightenment was done through intense focus on direct personal experiences using techniques such as meditation and paradoxical riddles over scriptural studies. It sought to break free from worldly attachments and illusions in order to foster an immediate understanding of reality in the present moment. This right here would be the catalyst Krillin would need in order to tap into this limit-breaking form. It would mirror that of Goku and Vegeta with their techniques, where a certain mind state would have to be reached in order to use it. Now that we have that, let's move on to how Krillin would acquire it, and later on in this video what it would do. Now in order to do this, we'll have to take a look into the history of Buddhism. However, the thing is, there is a lot, and I mean a lot of information within this religion. So much so in fact, that the few things that I will Frankenstein together for Krillin's new form to come to life barely scratches the surface of it. So let's get into it, shall we? Alright, there are a total of 2 things we will use in order to craft this form, its abilities, as well as the story connected to unlocking it. Those being the 4 Heavenly Kings and the 4 Noble Truths. To make a long story short, the 4 Heavenly Kings are guardian deities with a number of abilities that protect the world from negative influences and maintain harmony in the universe through control of directions. Their abilities include great strength and magical abilities such as control over certain elements, as well as a few other things, but these will be what we will focus on for this video. As for the 4 Noble Truths, they are the foundation of Buddhism, outlining the nature of suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path to liberation. Basically, this is the blueprint that Krillin would need to follow in order to achieve his limit-breaking form, as well as crafting its unique ability. Now that we have a semblance of what these 2 things are, we can move on to how he would unlock it. We can say that after a month of non-stop training, one morning Krillin would stumble upon his old Orang Temple gi. The tattered clothing would bring back a rush of memories, a few good ones and a lot of bad ones. However, another thought raced across his mind. That being that after so many decades of not hearing from the people that essentially raised him during his early childhood, he couldn't help but wonder whatever happened to them. Krillin would ponder on this for a bit, and after some thought he decided to go see for himself, and he'd take off. A few moments later, Krillin would land at his old temple, but something was off. It looked as if it had been abandoned for a considerable amount of time. The Earthling would make his way inside and he'd wander around as a strange feeling of sadness fell over him. However, that wouldn't last long as he'd stumble upon a room he had never seen before, and he'd let his curiosity get the better of him as he entered it. Along the walls, ceiling, and floor was the imagery of 4 fearsome-looking warriors surrounded by hundreds of monks meditating before them, 3 wielding a different elements: fire, ice, and lightning. But as impressive as they were, the 4th warrior stood out the most. His appearance was imposing, powerful, and demanded respect, but within that same breath he radiated an air of calmness and peace. His attention would then be brought to a singular scroll in the middle of the room. On it was a stamp in the shape of the cardinal directions. He looked at the scroll in awe as he grabbed it and opened it. To his surprise, however, there was only a few lines of text in it. It read, "I am a path that exists only while breaking the clouds. I divide the heavens to unite the sky and earth. I am born fully formed and die in the same breath, and leave nothing behind but the echo of a presence that no longer exists." After some thought, Krillin would say, "Lightning," and moments later the scroll would reveal a seemingly random location, somewhere far to the south with the text, "Awakening awaits." Krillin would follow it, and once he arrived he'd be met by seemingly nothing but a barren wasteland with skies filled with ominous storm clouds. Jagged lightning streaked across the heavens and struck all along the earth. Krillin would look in awe, but he'd wonder why the scroll led him here. The words "awakening awaits" would then cross his mind, and he'd remember the imagery within the old Orient temple. Moments later, the Earthling takes a meditative stance just like the monks did before the four warriors, clearing his mind of all distractions. Within seconds, the monstrous sound and violent trembling of thunder from the skies would seemingly come to a stop, and when the Earthling opened his eyes, to his surprise, a massive temple, once surrounded by storm clouds, appeared in the skies above. He'd then be greeted by one of the warriors he had seen on the walls within the Orient Temple. The warrior would then ask Krillin what was his purpose for seeking out one of the Heavenly Kings. Krillin would ponder upon this question as he really didn't think it through, but he answered that he was in search for power in order to protect his loved ones. The Heavenly King of the South smiled and he tapped the Earthling on the forehead, separating his soul from his body. From there, Krillin would train for an entire year alongside the warrior. He taught the Earthling two things. The first was how to move like lightning, how to strike with jagged form, blinding speeds, and deadly precision. The second and most important, he taught the Earthling how to embody one of the four noble truths, the truth of suffering. After his training was complete, the Heavenly King said his goodbyes and reconnected Krillin's soul to his body. The Earthling would then awaken within the world of the living with only an hour passing by. From here, the scroll would pose the warrior another riddle and he'd continue his journey going to the east and west. From there, he'd meet the two other Heavenly Kings, learn how to move like fire and ice, and lastly learn how to embody two more of the four noble truths, those being the truth of craving and secession. Lastly, the scroll would lead him to the Heavenly King of the North. However, this king did not teach Krillin how to move like any worldly elements, but instead he taught Krillin an extremely powerful technique, one that he'd be able to wield within the world of the living if he could embody the final of the four noble truths, the truth of the path of liberation. And after what seemed like 5 years, Krillin would finish his training with the Heavenly King of the North. Once back in his body, Krillin would ponder upon how much time had truly passed compared to how it felt. Although only 8 hours had passed in the living world since the start of his journey, to him it felt as if more than half a decade had gone by. However, moments later, he put that thought aside and he tried to manifest everything he learned in one breath, and after a few minutes he'd awaken into a new form, introducing us to something that I like to call Eightfold Path Krillin. Now that we know how he would acquire this form, let's quickly go through what abilities it would have. Just like the previous two Earthlings as well as the Big Five, this form will of course grant a massive increase to power. Alongside this, Krillin when in this form would be granted the ability to wield fire, ice, and lightning in the midst of combat, enhancing their potency with the use of his ki in order to allow these worldly elements to cause damage to his opponents. And last but not least, an ability that I'd like to call pacification. When using this technique, Krillin's attacks no longer cause any physical damage, but instead with each strike he lands, he attacks the opponent's soul, cleansing and pacifying with each touch, slowly but surely eliminating the malice within their hearts for a small period of time, causing them to reach a point where the thought of inflicting pain upon another hurts more than actually taking an attack, essentially allowing Krillin to put his opponents into submission without physically hurting them. Anyways, that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know what you think of Eightfold Path Krillin, and how do you think he would fare against the Big Five. Thank you to everyone that watched today's video. I hope you all have a great day. Peace, peace. Deuce, deuce.